Good morning. I am Lynn Bile Benson, co-chair with Bill Gregor of the Worship Committee of First Church Boston. And we're glad you're with us online or in person, cozy group here today, here in our magnificent sanctuary. I would like to welcome any visitors who may be joining us, and I wish all a peaceful and joyous new year. To learn more about First Church Boston or Unitarian Universalism, please visit firstchurchboston.org or contact Reverend Stephanie or myself during coffee hour. Coffee hour will be immediately following the service in the Narthex and the Emerson Lounge. Please join us for coffee and conversation. Today we have just a few announcements. There is a meditation group every Sunday at 10:30, and there is a sign-up sheet out in the Narthex if you would care to join us at 10:30 every Sunday before the service in the steeple room. And on Mondays from 12:30 to 2 p.m. in the Emerson Lounge and via Zoom is tea time with intern minister Lindsay Donnelly Bullington, who will be hosting weekly tea time for connection and conversation on Mondays. And just a reminder, our office is closed until January 2nd. Thank you again for being here today. This is a very special service at which we ask anyone who wishes to share a favorite poem written either by themselves or by a favorite poet. And I have some opening words from Wendell Berry. I begin to be followed by a voice saying, "It can't last, it can't last. Harden yourself, harden yourself. Be ready, be ready." Let our service now begin.
As I light our chalice and our Hanukkah menorah, please join me in the words of our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. If you don't know the Hanukkah story, it took a miracle to get it going the first time. And now, please, do we have a hymn first? Yes. Rise and greet your neighbors and wave at the camera for all the millions of us that are watching from home.
Our opening hymn this morning is 221, Light One Candle, in honor of Hanukkah. As a multi-faith congregation, we try to celebrate and honor the different ways that people find religious meaning. So please rise in body or in spirit as we sing together, Light One Candle. Please be seated. So this is a lay-led service, and normally I would be away, but earlier this fall I did a poem by Joy Harjo as a reading, and in the process of learning about Joy Harjo, who was a U.S. Poet Laureate and also Native American, I discovered that one of her poems was put into a children's book. Now, admittedly, it might be one of those children's books that's really more for the adults. You know how those happen sometimes. But it's a beautiful poem, and so I signed up to do the Time for All Ages so I could share this poem/children's book. So, by Joy Harjo, Remember. Remember the sky you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, we are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origins of the universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, you are this universe. And this universe is you. Remember. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your poems.
I wrote and sang this lullaby for a Christmas Day Sunday service here at First Church 19 years ago. The words are from one of the biblical mystery plays that were performed on traveling stages in the area around Coventry, England during medieval times. The poem is about the slaughter of the innocents when King Herod learned of the recent birth of the Christ child. The third stanza of the original poem makes it clear that it is the mothers of the children who are mourning the loss. I would like to think that both parents would have been equally distraught, so I left those lines out.
This
All right, time to show what we've got. This is a lay-led service consisting of poetry brought, selected, or in some cases written by members of the community, members of the congregation. If you're here and didn't know this was happening, some of you are visitors, don't worry, sit back and listen. We're very easygoing about that sort of thing. I would like to start it off in a way similar to what I did I think at our last Poetry Day, when I took one of the most widely quoted lines by Mary Oliver and gave the whole poem that most people don't read as a context for it. This is my other favorite Mary Oliver quote, and it comes at the end of a poem called In Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Now it's your turn. David, I think you said you had something?
I had some meditations on poetry. As a famous book says, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was good. What I think people have missed about poetry is the poem is preserved in print. The print, however, preserves the poem, but it does not show the poem. What is needed is for it to be read aloud. And my only haiku is the Reno haiku about poetry is to do and to say the profoundest thoughts in the shortest way. When you read poetry aloud, you breathe life into it. While I have nothing against reading the plays of Shakespeare, it is far better to see it on the stage, for when it is transported from the page to the stage, the life force comes. That is why for many years before print, poets were able to recite things and people memorize them immortal. One example of the economy of poetry is when the assassination of Harvey Milk, Mayor Moscone, took place in San Francisco. San Francisco native Lawrence Ferlinghetti, poet, owner of the City Lights bookstore, put it well: "Two sweet dudes are dead, and nothing more need be said."
Thank you, David. Who would like to try to follow that? Beverly.
Hello, this one It's part of a series I wrote called Songs of the Seasons, and this one is winter, and it was inspired by my family's backyard after an ice storm back when I was in high school. Okay. Let me see. Yes. Silver trees in dawn light shiver in the cold. Sunrise brushes branches, silver turns to gold. Golden sun in blue sky makes the noonday bright. Then the grayness gathers, filling air with white. Parting gray shows red sky, setting white aglow. Indigo enfolds all, silent as the snow.
Next.
Good morning, all. When I was a teenager, I had a poster in my room, and it was Desiderata. I don't know if you guys know that one, but I found greater comfort these days with it than I ever did there. So I'm going to read a bit of that. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strived for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaging. For many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy.
Okay, more Wendell Berry. He's my favorite poet, and when I was an English major at the University of Kentucky, he was on the faculty. I was much too intimidated to take one of his classes, but I did take creative writing from one of his dear friends and also a poet, James Baker Hall. So Wendell Berry and James Baker Hall were both classmates in graduate school and were lifelong friends. Wendell Berry used to refer to himself sometimes as the Mad Farmer. So this is from Prayers and Sayings of the Mad Farmer for James Baker Hall. It is presumptuous and irresponsible to play for other people. A good man would pray only for himself, that he have as much good as he deserves, that he not receive more good or more evil than he deserves, that he bother nobody, that he not be bothered, that he want less. Praying thus for himself, he should prepare to live with the consequences. At night, make me one with the darkness. In the morning, make me one with the light. Don't own so much clutter that you will be relieved to see your house catch fire. Beware of the machinery of longevity. When a man's life is over, the decent thing is for him to die. The forest does not withhold itself from death. What it gives up, it takes back. Let me wake in the night and hear it raining and go back to sleep.
We've had all of our favorites already. Wendell Berry, Mary Oliver, Joy Harjo, who's a new favorite of mine. We've got some time left before our mid-service break, so who would like to go next? Come on, yes. We really ought to build a ramp so that people can.
I didn't know that this was part of the service today, and I'm not much of a poetry person. I'm more of a music person. Thank you very much, gentlemen. But this has special meaning for me. For many years, my wife and I belonged to a very small Unitarian Universalist church in small town, not West Virginia, but Western Virginia. And it had been started by a couple in town 20 or 30 years before that who had said, we don't have any place to go to church that's not, Bible Belt, whatever. So they started it. And it was a small but thriving community. The man who was in that couple died 2 years ago, almost about this time of the year. And his wife put together a service for him. And she asked me to please read Walt Whitman's Song of the Open Road, which was one of his favorites. And I said, well, of course, I'd be honored to. So I Googled it and found it and looked at it and realized that this was going to take about 25 minutes out of the service. So what do you say when you think that the widow of the bereaved widow has made a really bad call in planning her husband's service? So I decided I had to anyway, because this was going to really disrupt things if I read something that lasted for 25 minutes. And when I told her, she broke out into laughter, and she said, no, the version that's in the UU hymnal, which is highly edited. This is that version. Afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me. Henceforth, I ask not good fortune. I myself am good fortune, strong and content. I travel the open road. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. All seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and women, you have done such good to me. I would do the same to you. Whoever you are, come travel with me. However sweet these laid-up stores, however convenient this dwelling, we cannot remain here. However sheltered this port, and however calm these waters, we must not anchor here. Together the inducements shall be greater. We will sail pathless and wild seas. We will go where winds blow, waves dash, and the Yankee clipper speeds by under full sail. Forward. Actually, in Whitman's version, he had a French phrase in there, but forward, after the great companions, and to belong to them, they too are on the road, onward to that which is endless, as it was beginningless, to undergo much, tramps of days, tests of night, rests of night, to see nowhere, anywhere but what you may reach it and pass it, to look up or down, no road, but it stretches and waits for you, to know the universe itself as a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls. Walt Whitman.
Thank you. That was a great story and reading. It reminded me the story of my discovery that a responsive reading in our hymnal by Denise Levertov was actually written in response to an earlier poem. At some point, I'll look that up and read you the whole thing in context, in continuity with my theme. It also reminds me of a hymn that we have, Once to Every Soul and Nation. This was very popular in progressive church groups when I was in college, the anti-war movement. It was a poem written by James Russell Lowell in 1845, condemning the Mexican War. And we had about 4 stanzas to the hymn, 3. And more recently, I discovered other denominations didn't have it in their hymnal. It wasn't theologically correct, but we still had it in the UU hymnal, and we had a 2-stanza version of it, which ruins my favorite line. And finally, I looked it up and found that it was really, there are several versions of it, all based on random selections of a 19-stanza poem with 5-line stanzas, and with a meter that makes it almost impossible to set to a traditional hymn tune. And everyone's done the best they could to take selections from it. Anyway, enough stories. Who's next? Mary.
This is a poem of Adnan Onarts, who's a member of our congregation. Ramadan in Dunkin' Donuts. From his asking about the time and double-checking his watch, I understood he was about to break his fast. Salamun alaikum, I said, the only Arabic I knew for all practical purposes. Alaikum salam, he replied. He was setting his table, 2 donuts, 1 chocolate glazed, the other Boston cream, and a thick lentil soup he had apparently brought from the grocery store across the street. Do you want to sit down and share? I thanked him. No. Aren't you fasting? I explained. My high blood pressure, my medication. He pointed to one of the donuts. Still, he said, let's share. The collapsing Twin Towers, the beheaded hostages, and the jumpy look on people's faces hearing my name. We already do, I said.
This is about the time for us to take a brief break for our offering. Those who still carry cash are welcome to put a bit of it in our collection plate in honor of the tradition of supporting institutions like this church and the communities that depend on them. If not, if you give online or not at all, you're still part of the community, part of the ceremony. Thank you.
When blossoms flower amid the snows on a winter night, 'twas born the child, the Christmas rose, the King of love and light. The angels
10, now we have time for more poetry. And as I pointed out the last time, unlike the days before COVID when we were on the radio and had to be over at 12 o'clock, and that also meant we had to keep things going until 4 or 12 o'clock, we're free. We can take as much time as we want, basically. So if you've got anything to read, to share, please bring it. Our chair.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Martin, and I have a poem by Gail Mazer, who is a Boston area poet. Some of you may know her. She founded the Blacksmith House poetry reading series in Cambridge decades ago and has been very much part of the poetry world of Boston. Her husband, Michael Mazer, is a well-known artist who was shown a couple of times at the Museum of Fine Arts when I worked there. And the cover of this recent book, Land's End, is a detail from a very beautiful painting that he did. I didn't realize till I started looking through this recent compilation of old and new poems that Gail Mazer was a born and bred Cantabrigian. And this poem is about a lifetime with the Charles River, which is also, I think, very important to many of us who arrived in Boston in our 20s or our 30s, and certainly to us here at First Church, where it is nearby. So this is To the Charles River by Gail Mazer. Because you flowed through my childhood, because summers I swam freely in your currents, because you froze every winter, metamorphosed to a glazed floor for skating, because I believed you were the first landing place for Leif Erikson, although the World Book claimed otherwise. Leif named his new discovery Woodland and Land of Flat Stones, because you had trees and many flat stones, gray skipping stones. Leif's men found wild grapes and salmon there, and my father fished from your shore, catching perch and pickerel, and found them delicious to fry in spite of their little bones. Because on the Day of Atonement, my grandfather walked from Dorchester to empty his pockets into you, casting off lint and crumbs for the year's sins, his good shoes steeped in your waters. Because your dark green trees promised to protect us, because twice I nearly drowned in you, and a neighbor child did drown, small body washed up on your snarled bank. Because my love and I canoed through your toxic years, when you'd become reeking and filthy, only mutant fish and water rats swam in you. He'd say, there's no great city without a river. And because a governor determined you were worth saving and cleaned you up and made you swimmable again and lively with mallards, grackles, American coots, in our warming world, nearly paradisial, because an ocean says eternity and a river says home. Because, dear familiar, I believe I haven't stepped into the same river twice, for other waters always flow into you, and I am always a different person. Because this chilly October, I find devil pods tangled among your river grasses, tough, grotesque little seed pods that look like bats or demons that will always live and thrive in you and in me.
Back in the 70s, I hung out with a group of friends, all of us in our 20s, and one of them went boating on the Charles, and the boat capsized. And as someone no one was harmed, but someone commented afterwards, I hear you ended up in the drink. And someone said, I wouldn't call it that at this point in the history of industrial pollution. Who's next? It's hard to see who's there, but I recognize a hand. It's John Bergstrom. Welcome.
Yes, John Bergstrom. Well, here's a new haiku from earlier this morning. True story. The flutter of wings in the meditation room, a winter sparrow. And here's one. This is probably Robert Frost's third best-known poem, but I've always liked it. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to know that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see a hand. Stephanie, it's so good of you to come and support the community on your day off.
So one of the holiday gifts I received was a book of poetry by First Church member Janet Banks. And while I forgot the book, I found one of the poems, pretty close to version, I think she did a light edit, called To the Roof. And it was written in response to a prompt in 2022 reflecting on the end of summer. We carry keys, wear sandals and shorts, shades, hats, like we're headed to the beach. Icy drinks filled to the brim slosh with a ceremonial clink, a toast to summer. Playful, dramatic, we ham it up, actors on vaudevillian stage. Phone in my pocket to capture summer's fading light, a year happier than the last, or worse, the one before that. Setting earlier each day, the sun and pale moon share the sky like good cosmic friends. Elevator empty, we sneak a kiss, a quiet ride to 6, no neighbors in sight. A scan of roofs below before we settle in chairs on the deck, a 360-degree view. A mourning dove sings her grief. At Fenway, a roar from the crowd. Summer is slipping away. A pesky wasp loses interest, soon breezy and coolish, perfect and still. The sleek Hancock Tower mirrors the city as the sun shoots a laser of light up her side. Construction cranes stand at attention, finished for the night. Our glasses empty, we're like patient patrons at a private viewing, waiting. The phone forgotten in my pocket. The tangerine sky bleeds out, hemmed by a peachy glow, and fuchsia swaths dissolve. A cool, dazzling moon owns the sky.
David has something else. Welcome back.
Some meditations upon poetry and the word. In the body politic, I suspect that poetry are the muscles that bind people together. An example of this is when Winston Churchill was visiting President Roosevelt during World War II. Churchill, being a person of the word who wrote for newspapers, for those of you under the age of 30, there was one thing called newspapers where people wrote for them and read news. They didn't go online. Please explain that to the youngsters. And he knew that literature was a part of all societies. And so when he was going through Maryland, he had memorized the poem by John Greenleaf Whittier, Barbara Fritchie. He began it, and the fact that he knew it showed that he was quite aware of the legendary poetry of America. A second thought on the subject was in one of the later films of the great John Ford, the man who shot Liberty Valance. When the truth about a legend is exposed, the newspaper person said, "This is the West. When the truth contradicts the legend, we print the legend." We have many legends in America, in the Northeast, in the South, the Southwest, the Middle West. We are people of our poetry, poems, plays, and stories. They are an integral part of us, and there's so much of a part of us, we don't really much think about it. But consider how many times you invoke the words of the good book, consciously or unconsciously, or Shakespeare. I'm amused by Dick Cavett, who once said, this little old lady said, "Oh, what's so great about Shakespeare? All his plays are nothing but a bunch of quotations strung together." I'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you, David. Who has anything else? We've got time for a few more. Joanne.
So, I was looking around for poems that written by some of my favorite contemporary poets, and this is not one of them, but I don't know if anyone gets Poem a Day from the Academy of American Poets. Most of those poems I kind of skim through and don't read. But they do publish every, month or so, kind of a list of poems that are suggested if you're interested in a particular theme. I see nods of heads. So I happened to run across this, which was actually something they published in 2017 by a poet I've never heard of, but the broad theme was on hope and resilience. So I thought that would be a good theme. So this poet, who is actually quite prolific, is Miller Williams. Some of you may know Lucinda Williams, who is a very well-known musician. This is her father. So, but he, in his own right, was prolific. He was also a translator. I've learned all this, a translator and an editor, and he was from Arkansas, which may explain why he read the inaugural poem at Bill Clinton's second inauguration. This is it. So that was, 1997. Of history and hope. We have memorized America, how it was born, and who we have been and where. In ceremonies and silence, we say the words, telling the stories, singing the old songs. We like the places they take us. Mostly we do. The great and all the anonymous dead are there. We know the sound of all the sounds we brought. The rich taste of it is on our tongues. But where are we going to be and why and who? The disenfranchised dead want to know. We mean to be the people we meant to be, to keep on going where we meant to go. But how do we fashion the future? Who can say how except in the minds of those who will call it now? The children, and how does our garden grow? With waving hands, oh, rarely in a row, and flowering faces and brambles that we can no longer allow. Who, where many people coming together, cannot become one people falling apart. Who dreamed for every child and even chance, cannot let luck alone turn doorknobs or not. Whose law was never so much of the hand as the head, cannot let chaos make its way to the heart. Who have seen learning struggle from teacher to child, cannot let ignorance spread itself like rot. We know what we have done and what we have said and how we have grown degree by slow degree, believing ourselves toward all we have tried to become, just and compassionate, equal, able, and free. All this in the hands of children, eyes already set on a land we never can visit. It isn't there yet. But looking through their eyes, we can see what our long gift to them may come to be. If we can truly remember, they will not forget.
And thank you. Anyone else? No pressure. It's close to noon. We can call it a day and go home with a sense of a work well done. If no one objects, does Beverly want to do another one? Yes, Beverly wants to do another one.
This is a modest poem about the creation of the universe. Okay, out of the darkness exploding in flame, into existence the great cosmos came, circling and swirling and finding a form. The stars and the planets emerged from the storm. Earth is the planet we claim as our own, but we must be mindful 'tis not ours alone. The sap in the branch and the blood in the vein flow through all living in nature's grand chain. Someday our planet, humanity's home, will die with our sun, and the remnants will roam. Yet not even then may the tale's end be told, for new stars arise from the ashes of old.
If there's nobody else, thank you all for a marvelous service. And we can move on to hymn number 350. The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time, hymn 350.
Time,
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice with these words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We'll close with another poem by Wendell Berry. Let the great song come that sways the branches, that weaves the nest of the vireo, that the ground squirrel dreams in his deep sleep and wakes, that the fish hear, that pipes the minnows over the shoals. In snow I wait and sing of the braided song I only partly hear. Even in the rising year, even in the spring, the little can hope to sing only in praise of the great. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. Thank you.